Oh boy! Oh boy! Journey to the Rise of Skywalker. I fucking hate those. Can we get this out of the way? Journey to the Force Awakens was one thing that really didn't journey to the Force Awakens. Then we had it for Last Jedi, and it did less journeying. And now we have it for Rise of Skywalker. Great. Just a bunch of bullshit I don't give a flying fuck about. So this is the only adult novel, unless Black Spire... No, Black Spire doesn't have it. I can see where I threw it after the last video. Resistance Reborn is what happens when you tell your author, who, by the way, has not written a Star Wars book, to my knowledge, at least not an adult novel, to, hey, you remember Zahn's Hand of Thrawn duology and how it ended the Bantam era, essentially? She probably went like, yeah, I probably read that at some point when I was younger. Like, we want you to do that, but only in a quarter of the size of that. But, you can tie characters in, but you can't use the movie characters. And like, oh, what, really? And it's like, yeah, I mean, we'll let you use Poe because Poe had a comic series. And we'll let you use Finn, kind of. But Rose and Connix... Who's Connix? Oh, Billy Lord's character? Oh, okay. You can't use them, really. They'll just be in the background. And, Rey? No. You can't use Rey. And don't really use Chewbacca either. What about Leia? Yeah, sure, you can use Leia, but she's got to sit down for most of this. Okay. So who's your main character? That's a good question, because I genuinely don't know who the main character of this book is. I guess it's Leia, because Leia's sort of the catalyst of everything, but there's no protagonist. You could say Poe is, but Poe doesn't undergo a change in this. No one really undergoes a change. In fact, most of your characters that you kind of care about, that are on the cover, don't do anything. In fact, Snap Wexley, also as I like to call him Fat Wedge, with a temper, does more, and he's not on the cover of this at all, unless that's his X-Wing right there. Wedge is in this. Wedge and Nora are in this. Okay, I'm so glad we're getting some Aftermath characters. In fact, this book, because Rebecca Roanhorse, I don't fucking know how to pronounce her name. The author couldn't use the movie characters. So we had to, Poe. Thank God. She introduces an interesting villain where he's like kind of a bitch, which is a little different than Blandy McBland. But even so, he's not great. But we got Inferno Squad shows up from Battlefront 2, or what's left of Inferno Squad after the DLC. Characters I don't care about is what that basically amounts to. They form a new squad, and they do things. People do things, kind of, except for Finn. He eats shellfish at a party and embarrasses Poe. And, yeah, they're broy now. So my whole thing with Poe and Finn is they literally had the most chemistry out of any two characters. So I was fully thinking we were going to have, like, a romance between them. But you don't get that in this. In fact, you don't get it in Rise of Skywalker either. He's got the obsession with Rey, kind of, in that, but we're getting sidetracked. But I have to bring up Rise of Skywalker, because this book is supposed to transition us from Last Jedi to Rise of Skywalker. It's Resistance Reborn. It doesn't do that. It couldn't do that. It couldn't do that in a book this short. First of all, it's not possible. I'm not going to blame her for it. But I feel like this was marketed as the key to everything. Like, this is how we bridge these two films. But it doesn't do that at all. So then, when they start reintroducing characters from previous books, it starts to feel like something near the end of New Jedi Order, like the Fourth Heretics trilogy, where you're bringing in all these Bantam characters and stuff, like characters we know, and it's like we haven't heard from in a long time. You get that in this. Like, we get some closure to New Republic Bloodlines. We get some closure to Aftermath. We finish off the Poe Dameron comics that got canceled. We do a lot of these things, but none of it's satisfying because we didn't care about the previous material. Let's be honest here, people. How many new canon books do most of the people consider good? Maybe the new Thrawn trilogy? It's got Zahn's name on it. Master and Apprentice, I consider that pretty good. Battlefront Twilight Company. Basically, not a single good book has been written in the new canon post Return of the Jedi. None. What do we have? Alphabet Squadron. Freaking the Aftermath trilogy. New Republic Bloodline. Phasma. Black Spire, but that technically, I guess, takes place after this book, even though that doesn't make any sense, and I wouldn't recommend reading it that way. That's how they have it in the front page of the book when it has the book lists in chronological order. And there's been various children's books, like Before the Awakening and The Legend of Luke Skywalker. And Lost Stars, you could say, was good. That's it. That's a YA novel, though. We're talking adult novels. Which, by the way, that's not brought up. That's not closed out. Why? I don't get it. I don't get why this book was written other than they wanted to attempt to make an EU book, but it fails at that. Literally, Rey, who I think everyone wants to see, well, besides Kylo Ren, you want to see Rey do things. Rey is not allowed to do anything in this book. Rey wanders around, follows Leia around, She gets in a blaster fight at the end, and it's a miracle that she even, shoots at something. Rey does a lot of moping and nothing. I can't even say moping. That'd be something that Rey does. Rey doesn't even do that. They have a conversation about Ben Solo that gets cut off. It's not in the book. There probably was a conversation, and Lucasfilm redacted that. Said, Miss Rebecca, you can't do that. She's like, oh, okay. And just gets rid of it. It's like, fuck, there's nothing in this book. There's literally nothing. It's a nothing book that pretends like it's this big climax and the end of an era. And it is an end of an era, to be honest. An end of a bad era. The end of, well, we're not going to tie books together. They're just going to be one-off adventures. Great. Really great. Here's the deal, though. People that read Star Wars books are not casual fans that want a one-off story. Typically, your book readers want to tie things together because, quite frankly, a lot of them come from the EU mindset where things tie together. So you can have a one-off story, but there will always be those little Easter eggs that tie it into something else. But the new canon doesn't do this. I mean, rarely does it. I mean, people play a lip service to Aftermath, probably because Chuck Wendig threatened them on Twitter. But other than that, nothing really. The comics don't really get brought up. Unless it's Jason Fry in The Last Jedi trying to save that god-awful script, making it into a movie novelization. It's nothing. Honestly, for a while, I wanted to give this a 0 out of 5. But I was mildly entertained by this, and I don't think I've ever given anything a 0 out of 5, ever, on this channel. Because, quite frankly, the book doesn't insult me. So it gets a 1. Just a solid 1 out of 5. Don't rate it. It's a giant waste of your time.